to today's topic, the future of food safety and medicine, 2025 predictions for a health conscious nation. I'm Emilia Lujan, your host and founder of Mindful Body Productions. We are a value-based digital marketing agency focusing on elevating healthcare brands to foster meaningful change in consumer culture and propagate a holistic approach to healing for our country. For those of you who do not know MBNews, we are an alternative media source dedicated to bringing you transparent insight into the landscape of health and wellness and how this is affecting consumers and medical professionals. The news tends to highlight a lot of turmoil without any sensible solutions, and at MBNews, we're dedicated to not only presenting pressing topics for your health, but sharing practical methods for our collective growth and betterment. In a little bit, I'll be bringing in our two speakers, Dr. Zoë Indigo, board-certified dermatologist, and Dr. Soma Mandal, board-certified internal medical physician. And together, we are going to shed light on food and medical trends, what consumers need to know, how they affect our overall health, and how it's portrayed through advertising and the mainstream media. All right, let's get the show started. I want to welcome everybody joining. We are at about 264.5 participants and climbing across the web. Thank you all for joining us this evening. First, I'd love to introduce Dr. Zoë Indigo. Dr. Zoë is a board-certified dermatologist based in Los Angeles. Dr. Zoë received her MD from Wayne State School and Medicine in her hometown of Detroit, Michigan. After completing her dermatology residence at UCLA, she established her own practice, starting in Beverly Hills and recently expanding to Inglewood. Dr. Zoë is dedicated to advancing health equity through her passion for dermatology, focusing on the root cause of skin conditions. Dr. Zoë has participated in many research studies at the National Institute of Health and completed a medical externship in dermatology at Harvard Medical Schools of Massachusetts General Hospital. All right, Dr. Zoë, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. Thank you for being here. I have one question for you to get started. Why do you think consumers should care about this topic we're discussing today?
Well, we should care because when it comes down to it, and you've heard it before, you are what you eat. So as a dermatologist, I see daily how what we consume really affects our overall health and our skin. So I think it's really important to care about the safety of our food because it will ultimately end up reflecting on our skin, which is the largest organ in the body. So whether that's acne or chronic skin conditions, autoimmune conditions, that's very important to know what we're putting in our bodies because, ultimately it will have a systemic and long-term effect.
I certainly agree with that. And it's so important to really look into these topics, especially as it's consistently evolving, right? Thank you so much for being here with us. Now, the next expert I'd like to introduce is Dr. Soma Mandal, renowned for her compassionate approach to comprehensive health care. With a practice located in New Jersey, Dr. Soma combines her expertise in medicine with a deep commitment to patient-centered care, ensuring her patients receive personalized and attentive treatments. She fuses traditional and Western medicine with her Eastern roots. Dr. Soma approach combines the best of both worlds. Dr. Soma graduated from the New York University School of Medicine and completed her residency in internal medicine at NYU Langone Medicine Center in New York City. With over 2 decades of experience, she has built a reputation for excellence in preventative care for women's health and chronic disease management. Thank you, Dr. Soma, for joining us.
Thank you. That was a lovely intro. Thank you so much.
Awesome. I'm so happy to have you. My first question to you is, why do you think medical professionals should care about this topic?
That's a great question. I think we should really care about this because food as medicine is a really, hot topic right now that patients need to know about and want to know about, especially in this country where we have so many advances when it comes to chronic diseases like diabetes and hypertension and heart disease, but not enough attention is paid to food and how that contributes to the inflammation that occurs in our body. And they're patients, they're people who have access to this information. And then there are other patients that I have that don't have access to that information. So we as doctors really need to be able to make this more accessible to everyone.
Certainly, and I'm so happy that you are one of the doctors that's really leading that march. So let's start by addressing the growing demand for food products that are free from harmful additives, synthetic chemicals, and contaminants. I mean, it's really no surprise since everyone is talking about the incredible number of food recalls happening now, and also demanding stricter regulations for added ingredients in our food. So technically, based on the changes in office, there's a lot of talk out there about RFK and what he is going to do. And without really getting into the technicalities of what is being said in the media, first let's take a look at this practically and see where we actually stand as a nation. So first, Dr. Zoe, from your professional perspective, how do you see these clean food trends influencing overall health outcomes, particularly in populations that may have historically lacked access to clean and nutrient-dense foods?
I'm excited to see clean food trends becoming more and more mainstream. I feel like, when we think of eating clean or even vegan, vegetarian diets, it's usually for a different socioeconomic class. So to see those options available, to, especially working class or underserved communities is really exciting. Particularly there's an initiative that I found interesting by Tiffany Haddish, who is using mainstream grocery stores to bring, nutrient-dense food and clean food and making that more accessible. You look at the prices of food at Whole Foods and in Erewhon, and it's to have clean and healthy food is often associated with a higher price tag. So I think it's early to tell, what the trend is going to do, but I think we know what the trend already did, and people being in these what we call food deserts, and their only access to food is something that's processed or comes in a paper bag, McDonald's, Wendy's, what have you. We see what that's done, obesity, diabetes, hypertension, very overrepresented in these working class communities. So I think it's a little early to tell where the trend is going to go, but it's exciting. I have a lot of patients who have chronic inflammatory conditions, and I'm able to say, let's cut out dairy. Cutting out dairy might help with the inflammation, and they can go to their local grocery store, and you can see oat milk alternatives, and you can see almond milk. I've even seen banana milk, so I think the consumers really drive the options, and it's exciting to see that there are more options for mindful consumers.
Yes, it really is fantastic. And I always like to say we vote with our dollar. And it's really great that more and more people are able to really choose what they want to eat and also learn, because these trends are taking the U.S. by storm. And I've had experience driving across the U.S. and hitting these food deserts, and me being mainly plant-based and wanting to eat as clean and as green as possible. It does make it a little bit challenging, but hopefully more and more people within these places in the United States are going to have more access to clean food. And also accessibility to learning about how to eat clean and really watch out for ingredients in their food, which is a whole nother topic, like what additives are in our food. A lot of foods that we see at the supermarket that are portrayed as healthy have hidden ingredients. And I think this is more new than, let's say, plant-based eating and clean eating. Now people are really talking about additives, like what is being added into my food, preservatives, seed oils, etc. And well, that is something that we went into further detail in another episode of MBNews. So if you have not watched that one, please check it out. Now, Dr. Soma, given your expertise in holistic health and with over 2 decades of experience as a physician, How do you see your patients' health shifting along with these consumer trends? I mean, do you think that the general population is becoming more and more informed, or do you see us getting more sick as a nation?
I think being an internist for the past 24 years, it's kind of giving away my age a little bit, but um, it has really made me see the trend of how things were and how things are now. And I do think that the internet has had a big influence on a lot of people in positive as well as negative ways. Because if you don't necessarily know what that information means, then it can be difficult, for people to understand how that translates into their daily health. There are a whole, range of diets from Atkins to South Beach, but those kind of diets are not necessarily healthy or promoted for certain conditions. So that's where doctors like ourselves, we have a role to help educate patients. While I do see more patients who are aware and feel like they're more in command of information that they're receiving, I feel like there's still a gap in education when it comes to understanding what it means. A lot of patients, I'll give you an example, they don't even understand what refined carbohydrates mean. And so I have to break it down for them. These are the types of carbohydrates that you should try to minimize because your sugars are high, you're pre-diabetic, or you may have diabetes. So a lot of it is using simple language to educate patients. But I do feel with the internet, with Google, that more information is accessible. And certainly there are more doctors like Dr. Zoe and myself who are coming out on social media and talking about these things. But I still think we need to do a whole lot more.
I certainly agree with that. And I mean, some progress is better than no progress at all. And as people learn more and more through the internet and the accessibility of certain nutritional needs of people, I think that's really a driving factor that's going to help people become more healthy in 2025 and the years to come. Now, there is a really hot topic right now taking place in the media with these food recalls that are taking place. Cucumbers, carrots, peanut butter, onions. I mean, we're supposed to be eating these foods to be healthy, but we're seeing people getting sick from their produce. So for anybody that would like to answer, what is the best way for us to protect ourselves from these contaminants?
Certainly. I mean, first off, just being aware, staying plugged in, and I agree. I've never received so many text messages from my grandmother telling me to avoid vegetables, but, I'm thankful that she's plugged into the media, one of the best things you can do, obviously, is washing your food, trying to buy locally when you can, trying to buy organic food or locally sourced food, that way, you just cut out all the different opportunities for pesticides and contaminants to enter the chain. And obviously, like when it comes to meat, cooking your meat thoroughly, I'm a medium rare kind of girl. But with more and more that we're seeing with our food and contamination, making sure that your meat sources is reputable. All beef patties are not created equal, and you just want to have that sort of awareness of food safety and food standards. It's tough when you're hungry and you just want to have something to eat, but keeping in mind, that you have to often protect yourself as well to sort of and be your own advocate when it comes to being healthy.
Certainly, we do need to be empowered as consumers and understand how to be healthy and make the proper choices. And I do see a trend with that. More and more people are talking about local foods. And we touched on this in our last episode more in depth, how to source your food properly. And from a marketing and media perspective, I do see that a big problem is the overproduction and overconsumption of food. I mean, we see huge farms, factory farms that are feeding animals in a very specific way to keep costs low, and that is lowering the quality of meat. And being someone that's eaten all kinds of diets, I mean, I've been an omnivore, vegetarian, pescatarian, vegan. I do see this issue happening across the board with meats and with vegetables. So it's important to eat clean, eat local, wash your vegetables, know where they're coming from, and always maintain yourself informed. So I'd love to start our next section by discussing how healthcare professionals can leverage these movements in their practice and how the landscape of medicine is shifting with these trends and potential shifts in policies. Now, I have a question for both of you, and I'd love to maybe hear from anybody that'd like to chime in first with this. What role do you think healthcare providers can play in interpreting these changes for their patients, particularly when it comes to bridging that gap between regulations and real-world choices?
So as an internist, I basically try to keep the language and the information simple for my patients. And a lot of patients are like, what should I eat? How many calories should I eat? What kind of food should I eat? And I basically say, keep it natural. If it's growing from the earth, eat it. If it's in a package or, some type of wrapper, try to avoid it. And, really be aware of what the ingredients are in your food. And one of the things that I'm glad about is that information is more readily accessible. We just have to be better about understanding what the information is on the nutrition package, learning what, the sodium content is, what the carbs are, how much sugar is in that particular food that you're eating, and understanding, right, if you're trying to curb your carbohydrates, that 15 grams of sugar in a container of yogurt is way too much and can be equivalent to eating ice cream. So these are certain things that I think, the regulations are helping, but people still need to be able to read and understand what it means for their individual health.
I completely agree with that. And I see a very big problem with people not really understanding the complexities of health, what to eat, what not to eat. And depending on what part of the United States you're in, depending on what circles that you hang out with, it all really depends on the level of education you might have towards health and wellness. And something that I see even in the marketing and media landscape is keeping things simple. Not only the information that maybe the doctor or the brand will provide to their audience, but also from what you said, Dr. Soma, is keeping your ingredients clean. And if you turn that label around and if you see, more than X amount of ingredients, 3, 4, 5, then probably stay away from it. Just to keep it simple, and the less ingredients, the better, right?
The less ingredients, the better. And if you can't understand what the ingredients mean, it probably means that it has too many preservatives and too many fillers.
Yes, certainly. I love that, keeping it simple. So as we look to the future of holistic approaches to patient care, and they are gaining traction, patients are increasingly seeking therapies that merge traditional medicine with alternative treatments like mindfulness, acupuncture, and even dietary intervention. Nonetheless, will new regulations make holistic care more accessible or not? I mean, this is a really big question that I certainly have. Now, I have a question for you, Dr. Soma. You're known for integrating your Eastern roots with Western medicine. And given the rise of these therapies, do you foresee more conventional approaches to medicine adopting holistic treatments?
I certainly hope so. And I can tell you, I certainly wasn't in this camp myself. I trained, in an allopathic medical school, Western trained, and up until, 10, 15 years ago, it was all about Western medicine. And then I had an accident, essentially, where I had my first taste of Eastern medicine. And you would think that of someone of South Asian background that I would have had access to that already. And I hadn't, surprisingly. And I'll share with you, I had, a very nasty fracture, and I was hospitalized, and I was, they were giving me all sorts of medications, and nothing was working. And that's where I had my first exposure to acupuncture, which took away the pain by 80%. And that was when I realized that everything that I learned was important because it gave me a structure, but that I did not know everything to healing, that there was a whole lot more that I needed to be exposed to. And so I kept my mind open, learned about acupuncture, learned about Ayurveda, learned about all sorts of other types of holistic treatments that I don't necessarily practice, but I also promote to people so they can understand that there's not just one way of practicing medicine. There are ways, let's say if your pain medicine isn't working, or you're still feeling depressed, there are other types of treatments that are available in conjunction with what traditional medicine is doing to help.
Certainly. And one thing that I have seen being in the health and wellness space for 10 years and exploring different modalities is your body has the innate ability to heal itself given the right conditions. And if medical professionals are equipped with the knowledge and have a robust understanding of health and wellness, then they're able to really support the healing of their patients and not propagating disease. Now, Dr. Zoë, I'd love to hear your take on this topic as well. Do you foresee more conventional approaches to medicine being adopted in holistic treatments, both together?
I mean, I'd really hope so. I think as physicians, one of our roles is not only to just be an advisor, but also to be a confidant and recognize the struggle, with when it comes to eating and when it comes to eating mindfully. So I think that, the American people across the board are just frustrated with insurance companies. I think we've seen in the media that, some have been moved to murder. And I think that, physicians are frustrated as well. So through advocacy and through education and clinical trials and studies, we can see the benefit of bringing, Eastern medicine or just new innovative approaches to medicine that honestly may end up being cost effective for the insurance companies as well. So I personally think there's someone doing a calculation and they've decided, is it cheaper to, for example, give you acupuncture or to do the surgery or to give you pills for, however many X years. It's all, numerical and data points. So I think the more data points that we have and that we can expose and share, the more likely it will be to be covered by insurance. I mean, acupuncture 20 years ago was not covered by insurance. It wasn't even recognized, as a therapy. And in a lot of medical schools, it's still not taught or valued. Nutrition, I think my medical school class was one of the first to have a nutritional course. I think the whole thing lasted 2 to 6 weeks, so I think there's so much that we have to do, and learn from a patient perspective and a provider physician perspective as well. But it's an exciting time to be a part of it because I think people are just demanding that change.
Definitely. And when there's a demand, then the supply increases. And I think that's standard across the board. And just being in the media space and seeing just the general mainstream media talking about, when I first went vegan, people thought I was crazy. They're like, what are you doing? What do you mean? There was even no vegan restaurants in my area. I lost so much weight because I just had to learn how to eat on my own, and I was eating just vegetables and grains, and now it's booming. Now you go to any restaurant and you say, well, I'm vegan, and they know that they're not going to recommend the fish like they did maybe like 7-8 years ago. So it's certainly an increase within food trends, and of course also with medical trends. Now patients are becoming more aware. And me working with doctors as well, I'm seeing that a lot of doctors are starting to become aware that there are root causes to health. And it's not only about, symptoms and the Band-Aid approach that we are all used to. So luckily, we are gearing towards that area. In 2025, I think there's going to be a really big boom in those spaces, and more so in the coming years. So it's exciting to see, and also from a media perspective, I'm really interested in seeing how that is reflecting in, packaging and how doctors are presenting themselves. I'm very, very curious to see what the future holds for us. And now, of course, more and more conventional medical practices are adopting holistic perspectives, and more alternative healthcare providers are hitting the market. And with these evolving trends, it's so essential for health and medical professionals to really position themselves as practitioners that embrace alternative approaches that focus on holistic health. Now, I'm absolutely overjoyed having both of you sharing your knowledge, your expertise, and your wisdom with us. So thank you both for sharing your in-depth insight. I'd love to leave some time to open up to the audience for any questions. Does the audience have any questions for us currently, or any comments that we would like to highlight? Let me take a look.
They call it sonic branding, the snap, crackle, and pop that you hear from Rice Krispie cereal. So, they've got billions and billions of dollars head start. So it's fingers crossed that we can keep up in terms of health advocacy marketing.
100%. And when I went to school for public relations and advertising, within my first year, I was so disappointed to see how the media manipulates consumer culture and influences us into thinking that something is good for you by playing on emotions. And that's why I'm so passionate about what I do, right? I love health and wellness. I absolutely love this space. And, life always brings me back to marketing, to communications, right? So bridging that gap is very important. And I do see, as this trend rises and evolves, more and more of this demand is needed. So hopefully even the news catches up and talks more about these topics, not only to address the issues with consumers, but also giving actionable solutions. And really that's what Mindful Body Productions and MBNews is about. So I have my first question here. If you're a practitioner that is looking to adopt a holistic approach to your practice, what should be the first step?
I think the first step is a willingness to learn and just keep an open mind. Certainly a lot of doctors that I know, that I engage with, and I talk with a lot of them on my own podcast, where a lot of doctors like myself who trained in internal medicine or family medicine are now practicing functional medicine. So they've had a whole training in a totally different specialty. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think I have the capacity to go back and do additional training at this point in my life. I have other ambitions, but I certainly try to keep an open mind and learn and talk to people and listen to my own patients, because I learn from them. So they not only learn from me, but I learn from them what's working for them. Why is it working for them? How can I apply those same principles to my next patient? And then also reading. Like I said, the internet has really, made a lot of information accessible. We we as doctors just need to know how to use that appropriately, just like patients. So there's a whole wealth of information out there that we can utilize to help our patients when it comes to alternative or other treatments besides Western treatments.
Certainly, we should never stop learning, and that's a very important point, because I always look at it from the perspective that we don't know what we don't know. So keeping an open mind is very, very important, and I love that you shared that. Now let me see what other question. We have time for one more question. Let me see here. One question coming in: what is one last thing that you would want to share with consumers as a number one takeaway? From Rebecca.
Yeah, I think a number one takeaway would just to be mindful of what you eat. Know that something as simple as a Coca-Cola is not that simple. There's so many sugar additives and research done to make that chemical synapse in your brain so that it is addictive. And also that it's not your fault in terms of, this journey that we're on. There's so much in advertising and lobbying and media that's going into it. So we really have to be vigilant because we're in a silent but deadly food war.
Yeah, we definitely are. And I mean, I've tried even cleaning rust off of my supplies with Coca-Cola. So that just speaks to what the product can do for somebody's health. Now, I think that's all the time we have, but I actually have one more question here that looks very interesting. Now, if a health professional is looking to stand out from the growing market of other health professionals that are adopting this, what would you say is the key factor to standing out and being able to share your message to your patients?
I found that.
Go ahead, Kelly. Go ahead.
I found that being involved with different organizations, for me, the Integrative Dermatology Association has been a funnel, and then also getting to know like-minded local physicians. So whether that's your local nutritionist or your local chiropractor or, specialist, and then having those sort of cross referrals, and I found that to be really beneficial.
I love that. Thank you. It's certainly important to network with other professionals so that you can see what they're doing and collaborate with them to lift each other up. Dr. Soma, you had a thought. I'd love to hear your final thoughts on this point.
I think there are a lot of ways that doctors can stand out, and definitely the way Dr. Zoe has mentioned, but also we are in an age where we can share our voice with literally millions of people by talking on social media, by talking on podcasts, appearing on television, writing. There's so many different ways to stand out. You just have to be willing to embrace that and feel comfortable with that, because a lot of my patients actually connect to me in that way. They follow me on Instagram. These are ways I would never have imagined when I started medical school, but I am open to it now. And I feel like I can share information with a lot more people than I would have otherwise.
I love that. Yes, that's so important to show up. And a lot of my clients come to me and they're scared of being in front of camera. And just from a marketing perspective, for Sandra here, it's just really important to take that first step. And sometimes it's scary, but giving people value, the way that you should approach being on camera, instead of saying, oh, I hate doing content, I hate being on camera, is whoever watches my video, whether it's 5 views, 100 views, 100,000 views, you're impacting people in a positive way. So just take that first step, be consistent, and keep going. So thank you, everybody. We are now coming to a close on our second episode of MB News. A special thanks to the Mindful Body Productions team for making this happen. I also want to thank our speakers for sharing their expertise with us. And lastly, I want to thank the audience for being here, because by bringing awareness to these issues, this is where we as consumers can vote with our dollar and advocate for change. Please join our next live coming up on February 5th, the day after World Cancer Day. We'll be speaking on the rise of integrative oncology, bridging cancer treatments with holistic care. So please sign up to our list by following the link or using the QR code that's available right here so you can stay updated. Thank you very much. Have a great evening, everybody. Woo, it's a wrap. Awesome. How'd you ladies feel?